right. Well, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I am happy to be here with some distinguished alumni ambassadors and to introduce you to them. My name is Michelle Belorci, and I'm an outreach and recruitment specialist at the Institute of International Education here in Washington, D.C. And every year we onboard a cohort of scholar alumni ambassadors to represent the program and share their stories. And I have 3 sessions lined up for you in the next few weeks. Today is the first of 3, and so you'll be able to meet all 14 of them in these sessions. So stay tuned for more exciting news from the program and the alumni, and you can sign up for those webinars on our webinar page. The next one is July 1st, and then we have another one on July 9th. So let's get started. Before we introduce the alumni ambassadors, I want to give a brief background in case you haven't attended one of our webinars before. Fulbright is celebrating its 75th anniversary this year, and we're very excited to showcase more and more achievements that our alumni have done around the world on their Fulbrights, both the student side of the program and the scholar side of the program. But for the past 75 years, Fulbright has partnered with 160 countries to offer unique opportunities to teach and research and study, not just to faculty and students, but also to administrators, artists, journalists, and professionals from all fields. The mission of the program is to foster mutual understanding, but ultimately we aim to improve lives around the world by advancing knowledge across communities. The program was established in 1946. It is the government's flagship international and cultural exchange program, and it is sponsored by the U.S. Department of State. We at IIE administer the program, but there's also generous funding that the program receives from several countries around the world. Our mission in Fulbright is to have not only an applicant pool, but a grantee pool of Fulbrighters that represent the diversity of the U.S. And so we encourage everyone to think about applying for a Fulbright and to go on our website and learn more about the kinds of opportunities we have available. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fellowships available for faculty, for independent scholars, for administrators, and then also for students. The scholar program, which we're focusing on today, is for those that already have a terminal degree or, if not, several years of experience after a master's degree. So if you'd like to learn more about the student program, you can visit their website. All right, so who are the alumni ambassadors and what is this program all about? So alumni ambassadors are recent scholar alumni that apply to serve as official representatives of the program, and they serve for 2-year terms, and they come from a variety of topics and disciplines, institutions, and they're all across the U.S. They are selected for their achievements as Fulbrighters while they were in the country, and also the impacts they've had once they got back to the U.S. And we'd like to showcase a few of them here today. That's why we've got these webinars lined up, so you can lean on them and learn from them, as they're there for you as a resource. They travel, when we are back to traveling, they travel across the country just like the outreach team does. They'll be able to visit campuses across the country to share about their experiences. They participate in conferences, they're on social media, and they're really the voice of the program. You can hear all about the program from my team and how to apply and the importance of a Fulbright, but the alumni can really tell you what they did, the value of the program, and kind of how to go about it, what their pathway to Fulbright was. The funding for this program actually comes from IIE's Fulbright Legacy Fund. So this is a cost share that we have with the State Department. So this is an IIE-sponsored program, and we work closely with the State Department in putting together activities and selecting the cohorts. So the cohort that you'll be meeting today was recently onboarded, and they will serve until 2023. All right, so without further ado, let's start with Kendall. Professor Cotton-Grant, please tell us about your Fulbright. We'd like to learn more, and then we'll go around and do some Q&A.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, so I did a Fulbright in Greece in 2016. And at the time, Greece was in the midst of a lot of economic and political chaos. There were a lot of migrants coming in from the Middle East. And of course, this was when talks of the Brexit were well underway. So I was really interested in studying the effects of this political and economic unrest on young people's development. So I worked with my host person who was at the University of Ioannina in Greece, and we conducted a mixed method study looking at the effects that the political and economic unrest had on young people's views of the future and their sense of purpose in life. As you can see from this picture, I also brought my family along. Due to work, my husband couldn't be there the whole time, though he did come visit us a couple times. But I really enjoyed having my kids with me. The program was so generous. They actually helped support putting my kids in school. So my kids got to go to Greek school in Ioannina. And I think through just, through their being in school and through my working at the University of Ioannina, we met lots of people, made lots of friends, and I made tons of professional contacts. I was actually just emailing with one of them this morning. We're working on a book together. So I think that's fairly well sums up my experience. I have to say it was a once in a lifetime kind of opportunity. I was really so grateful to have the chance to study in Greece as a Fulbright scholar.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kendall. We'll hear more about your path to selecting Greece a little bit later. I just want to make sure that we get everyone introduced. So let's move on to Drew.
Hey everybody, I'm Drew Ippoliti. My Fulbright was centered around traveling through South Korea and eating every food I could find on one hand, but on the serious hand, it was more focused on gathering people's stories about the art world and how it was affected in South Korea by the rapid modernization of the 1980s and early 1990s. So I spent time with economists and artists talking about what their past experiences were, hearing about multiple million-dollar ideas that almost made it but just fell short at the last minute, and learning a great deal about the traditions of Korean culture and the traditions specifically of Korean ceramics. Ceramics is my field, so that was kind of the most interesting part for me. But I really had to give myself a primer in economics to understand what was going on in the country and how these little changes in currency and, IMF loans affected millions of people's lives and forged Korea into the country that it is today. Along with my research, I taught at Gukmin University, which is a leading arts and design university, and so I got to work with undergraduate students who were in their second year, graduate students who were in their second year of a 3-year program, and I got to share some time with some PhD candidates and learn about what their goals were and how they were approaching the art world in South Korea. So it all kind of culminated into a very interesting mix of experiences that I feel like, even though it's been 2 years, I'm still really processing all of the information, and I actually can't wait to go back. I'm ready for everything to open up, and I'm ready to get back to East Asia personally.
Great. Thank you, Drew. Yeah, I found this photo of you, and I couldn't resist putting it up. So I'm sure you had a lot of great experiences over there with the food and exploring all of that. So we'll hear more. Jeff, Professor Johnson in the house.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to speak today, and it's a pleasure to be here. My Fulbright was in Chile. I spent 6 months in Chile in 2015. So I was down there as a researcher and a teacher at the University of Concepcion in Chile. And my research focused on volcano work, and Chile has plenty of volcanoes to go around. And I coupled my Fulbright experience with research objectives funded through the National Science Foundation. So I like to say that NSF provided the destination, which was Chile, but Fulbright provided the opportunity for an immersive and extended duration collaborative work. within Chile. And in particular at the University of Concepcion, I have colleagues which I interact with to this day. And one of the cool fallouts of my Fulbright a few years back is that I return to Chile regularly, and I do so with students. So Boise State University students, 9 of them went to Chile just before pandemic, about a year and a half ago.
That's phenomenal. Great to hear that the collaboration continues and the students are really benefiting too. Great. Stephen.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Stephen Jones. As it says here, I did my Fulbright down in Namibia in Southwest Africa I was at the Namibia University of Science and Technology, but I was actually in a research institute, interestingly funded by the German International Development Agency. And I was there, as it said here, working on road safety issues. And while my Namibian colleagues didn't necessarily agree, and that was an interesting debate in the community, the year before I went, or I applied rather, Namibia was ranked the most dangerous country in the world to drive if you look at the number of road deaths per 100,000 population. Now, part of that is it's a relatively small population for a large African country. Suffice to say, there were plenty of challenges. It was a pretty amazing experience professionally. I got involved. I taught classes. I gave guest lectures in other people's classes. To this day, I'm still collaborating with faculty members there. We have a road safety project in Namibia that's funded by the Volvo Foundation that I'm still working on. I'm currently still the de facto advisor for 2 master's students in civil engineering. And if we can ever get through this pandemic situation, I'm supposed to go down there and finalize some paperwork and some handshakes and finally be granted adjunct status. So looking forward to formalizing the ongoing collaborations. And I was not able to take my family. My wife did come with me, and that's sort of a Fulbright success story in and of itself. Happy to talk about, opportunities for spouses and family. But even though my family wasn't there for the full time, I did manage to get all 3 of them there for my 50th birthday. So that was part of the experience as well. Great,
thank you. And we're going to hear more about how that kind of multiplier effect, worked for your family with Fulbright. So let's talk about the path. How did you think about, first of all, how did you hear about Fulbright? Was there kind of an ongoing connection with an institution, and how did you, what were some factors that you had to consider, and how did you ultimately select the countries that you went to? So Stephen, with the road safety, that might be understandable, but for the others here, just if you could share a little bit about that, and we can maybe start with Kendall.
Sure. Yeah, I was looking for, so I have a background in psychology. I'm a professor of psychology. And so I was looking for positions in, in that space. And there are not tons of Fulbright positions in psychology. So the one that I found that was really the best fit just happened to be in Greece. The woman who ended up being my host had actually come to the U.S. as a Fulbrighter herself and had studied, I studied positive psychology. So she had studied with one of my colleagues. So I didn't know her before, but when I got online and I learned about the program in Greece and I saw that they were interested in positive psychology, I reached out to her. She was the contact person, just found her name and email listed on the Fulbright site. And we connected via Skype. This was back before the Zoom days because it was 2016, I think. And we had a couple of Skype sessions, and I felt like we really connected, and we really had some shared interests around what it was that we wanted to look at among young people in Greece. So yeah, I think it was really just the fit, the fact that they were interested in positive psychology, which is really my area of expertise. And my host happened to be up for tenure. And so she thought it would help her chances at tenure as well to bring in an international person and, offer some lectures at her university. And I ended up lecturing at other universities as well around Greece, but on positive psychology, and also to participate in this international collaboration. So Greece wasn't the country I had imagined going to, but I was pretty open, and I was really excited when I found that they had some interest in positive psychology.
Great. So then what you're saying, Kendall, is that you didn't necessarily have a project in mind that was tied to a specific country, but once you made the connection, then the project kind of naturally developed. Is that right?
I think that's just right. Yeah, I had a couple of different things that I was interested in looking at. I really was interested in looking at purpose from a more of a global sort of context level. And so I could have done that in multiple countries. But then when Greece emerged as a country that was interested in having somebody with my background, I looked more into the political and economic situation in the country, and it just made a lot of sense.
Great. So, Drew, you mentioned that, you have maybe, I think, family in Korea. Did you have a connection already to Korea? How did you choose Korea as a place to do your Fulbright?
So my first interaction with Fulbright was in 2009. I went to China as a student fellow. And from 2009 to 2014, I had been bouncing around in multiple countries in East Asia. So I knew I wanted to go back to East Asia, and the countries I hadn't really spent time in were South Korea, North Korea, which wasn't really an option, and Japan. So I opted for South Korea. My spouse is South Korean, so making the contacts were not that challenging for me, but rather than using family connections, I went ahead and connected with some graduate students at my own MFA institution who were from Korea, and just asked for connections to faculty members and universities that they had in their undergraduate experience. And I used that as a pathway to kind of find an institution that was interested in hosting a foreign scholar and interested in having me teach. I am not tenured at the moment. So teaching was important for my institution, that I do a little of that along with research. So it was easier to connect with schools that were already aware of the idea of hosting a foreign scholar and hosting someone who might teach classes along with doing a personal project. So I went through those avenues and ultimately chose Korea because I thought it would be fun, and it would give me an opportunity to get to know the climate and the culture that my spouse came from, and hopefully get to know more about the world and the region of East Asia.
Great. And so the project kind of evolved once you selected the country. Is that right?
Unfortunately, I knew I didn't want to focus on the Korean War and that nobody wanted to really talk about it. So talking about other things that had much more maybe positive impacts for people, or impacts that felt closer, seemed like a more enjoyable thing to do than like rehashing 1950s.
Got it. Great. So Jeff, you mentioned you had something going on with the NSF already. Could you tell us a little bit more about why you thought about a Fulbright in addition?
Certainly, yes. So I knew about Fulbright because I had been a scholar some 10 years earlier in Ecuador in 2005. And I had such a positive experience with that I knew Fulbright would be in my future once again if I could make it work. And it turned out that it worked out quite nicely to integrate NSF-sponsored research. And I'm the photograph in the center bottom here in front of the volcano, and this is the volcano that the research grant was targeting. And like I said before, I realized that Fulbright would permit me a longer duration experience and a more successful research project because I had to put out sensors to record volcanic activity. So 6 months as opposed to just a campaign of several weeks was really what Fulbright offered me in terms of a research benefit. But then there's other benefits as well. And you can see there's a family in this picture, including my, at the time, 11-year-old son and 8-year-old daughter. And they both came down for 6 months along with my wife and were able to attend school, Spanish only school, which was an experience. I'd like to think of it as a positive experience. But yeah, it was an opportunity for productive research, productive collaboration, but also family growth. And that was one of the main motivations to pick Chile and pick it for the time duration that we did.
Great, thank you. Stephen, tell us a little bit more about how you came to arrive on applying to the award to Namibia.
Absolutely. So interestingly, so the picture there in the bottom right of the screen that I'm in, that's actually from a road safety workshop that I did with a university in Ghana that I've had a long-standing affiliation with. They actually have a World Bank funded transportation center. I'm on the advisory board of it. And Fulbright is something that I have wanted to do for a long time. For all sorts of other reasons, our kids were, had to get through tenure and that sort of thing, and that sort of timed with some other things, and my kids had all moved out of the house and gone off to college, so it seemed like a convenient time to jump ship for a while. So we were getting ready to pull the trigger and make the application, and I just always assumed that I would do a Fulbright in Ghana. And right before that, I was actually presenting at a road safety workshop in Zimbabwe. And I mean, as these things happen, I just met this fantastic guy there who was at the Namibian University of Science and Technology. We hit it off and had some ideas, and he basically sold me on the idea of coming there and working with him, which was fantastic. I'm still working with him. The punchline, however, is I got there in January of 2019, and because of some academic politics and the fact that he was Kenyan and not a Namibian national, his contract was not renewed, and he left Namibia in April. So I didn't get to spend the entire time working with him, but even that created some new opportunities because I was forced to branch out and work with some others and make my own contacts independent of him. So ultimately, it was a pretty fantastic experience, and I wind up collaborating with both. And then the last thing I'll say is because, Michelle can correct me, I believe it's specific to Fulbrights on the African continent, but Fulbright also has what they call their regional travel program. So while you're on your Fulbright in a particular African country, you can apply to travel to one or more other countries on the continent to sort of share and connect one Fulbright with another. So interestingly, while I did wind up spending my Fulbright in Namibia, I did apply for a regional travel program grant and went to Ghana and shared some of my experiences there. And the cool thing there is, I mentioned before that I'm still working on this Volvo Research Foundation project with the Namibians, but that project is actually involves the university in Ghana as well, because they wanted some comparative work. So it was sort of a fantastic way to triangulate and kind of connect my own personal network, and now they're connected with each other, and so that really turned out to be great, I think, on a number of accounts.
Great. So I want to go to another question, speaking about the factors. We hear a lot of questions and concerns from applicants about arranging things with your home institution, whether you're at a college or university. Most of our applicants tend to be affiliated, though we did have a question that came in, is an affiliation in the U.S. required? And I just want to let everyone on the call know that it's not required to be affiliated with a college or university or any other organization. So we do accept applications for independent scholars. But for those of you that had to, once you got selected, what were the talks like? Did you let them know that you were applying in your department, that the Fulbright could be on the horizon? How did you manage the coursework, getting covered, et cetera? Or did you have a sabbatical? How did that work? And then also, considering the stipend oftentimes for Fulbright is lower than faculty salary, how did that work?
I can start with that one. So I was actually pretty fortunate in that I had a sabbatical coming up. As it turns out, my sabbatical was supposed to take place in the spring, and the Fulbright was being offered in the fall. So I approached my dean and just asked, is there a possibility that I could take my sabbatical early? And when I explained to him that I was going to be doing a Fulbright, he was really open to it. He was really supportive. So I was lucky in that regard. And with regards to the money, because it was my sabbatical, I was still paid by my home university, which was nice. And actually, I found the Fulbright stipend to be very sufficient to get by in Greece. Greece is not a particularly expensive country to live in. So it was totally sufficient for housing. Fulbright, like I said, very generously picked up the tab for my kids' school. And, I used my own money to supplement, do some extra travel and things like that. But I felt like the Fulbright funding was really sufficient for what I needed. While I was there, I worked mostly at the University of Ioannina, and I did most of my interviews pretty locally, so it wasn't a super expensive project. But I did travel to Thessaloniki and to Athens and to give talks, and those expenses were covered as well. So I felt like the funding was really sufficient, and I was grateful that I was also being paid by my university, which allowed me to pay my mortgage back home and all those kinds of things, since those expenses don't disappear.
So when I was applying, I had spoken to my direct report to let them know that I was in fact applying, and I think they were as happy as I was when I was able to confirm with them that the award was offered. So we worked together to go up the academic chain and get it approved. I was also quite fortunate. While I didn't have a sabbatical, the Korean school year kind of runs counter to the American school year. So their main semester starts March 1st. So I taught until March 1st and was given a 7-week leave of absence. And by that point, we were then on our summer recess. So I was able to teach through the summer in Korea and then return back to the U.S. for the following academic year at my institution. So similar to Kendall, I found my stipend more than enough to work with, but I was also able to retain my salary for things like mortgage, car payments, and all that other stuff that doesn't go away while you're having a research fellowship. I was lucky enough, again, in Korea, that maybe the most expensive thing I had was the place I was living, and the university had helped me arrange something that they called a foreign scholars apartment, which was a small one-bedroom apartment that had a kitchen and a bathroom, and was totally sufficient for my needs. So that would have been the biggest cost, but since it was on the university campus, it was at a reduced rate, and that's the biggest issue in Seoul, is that housing is so expensive.
All right. I'll go next. And yeah, this is an interesting question because I did not think to ask my university for any reprieve or an early sabbatical, which I was not yet up for. And so that's something I've since learned as an ambassador, that once you are given an award, or even perhaps beforehand, universities are very happy to potentially work with you and provide some resources to help you through an extended duration. They love Fulbright. It's so prestigious in so many ways. However, I did have great conversations with my home department. So being gone for January through June, I was going to be absent from my teaching obligations. And I worked with my chair and my department to organize and actually teach a class within Chile, for which students would register through my home university, Boise State University. And I ended up advertising this field-based class that was intensive, 3 weeks long, and for which some 15 or 16 students attended from all over the US and in Chile. So they actually paid registration dollars for this class through Boise State University, traveled to Chile and worked with me, and I was able to call that my my spring semester teaching obligation. So I want to thank my department for being flexible with that, but it was sort of a no-brainer for them to agree to it.
I think first of all, I had great support from my university, and I certainly appreciate that. I also think I kind of got a bit lucky. University of Alabama, it considers them their kind of a top producer of Fulbright students, undergrads going off and doing the Fulbright. So there's a lot of enthusiasm for Fulbright, but I approach this to my civil engineering department, College of Engineering structure, and I think a lot of whom sort of have been amused or kind of tolerate my international interests sometimes. And I told them that I was going to apply for a Fulbright, and honestly, I think they sort of said okay. And then were a bit surprised when it came to reality, and then everybody had to put their money where their mouth was, so to speak. But the positive aspect of that is that the university it raised the issue of, okay, well, what do we do with this? We don't have a structure for this, and it wasn't me personally, but that mechanism actually kicked into gear a rewriting or an amendment to our faculty handbook, and there is now a specific section in the faculty handbook on prestigious scholarships, and it sets out that that you will retain your full benefits and salary and everything. So now that structure is in place here at UA. So that's certainly been a great thing, and I appreciate everybody along the way, from ultimately my department head, who I think still scratches his head about it, all the way up to the international provost office, because everyone was supportive along the way. And the other thing I'll say is the dean of my college, who's a wonderful guy, and I think was the most baffled of why I would even want to do this the whole time, still to this day refers to my Fulbright experience not being in Namibia, but he refers to it as Narnia. So
that's great. Okay. Thank you all for shedding some light on that. So I'm happy to hear that it all worked out, and that your campuses were supportive. So let's take we actually had a question that came in. So did any of you consider or have any trepidation or kind of were hesitant about the language requirement? We actually, in the award description, just to put it out there for everyone on the call, if a language is required for that particular country, it'll be stated. So I think with Namibia, there was no requirement. For Korea, I don't believe, unless it was required by the project. But I think the awards that do require it are in, Central South America. So Jeff, how did you approach that? And if the others could also chime in.
Yeah, I did have to operate in Spanish in Chile, and that for me was, I would say it was a challenge, but one that I looked forward to. I really quite enjoy trying to communicate in a foreign language, and so for me it was a big adventure, and it wasn't something that was putting me off from the Chile program.
And did you also teach in Spanish? I think I had seen that in your bio.
Yes, yeah. So, well, of course, I mentioned that I brought students down to Chile for this field methods class, and that class was in English. But I also did end up teaching a couple classes for the University of Concepcion, and those classes were entirely within Spanish. I won't say I aced every lecture, but it was. Fulbright is a learning process and an experience for those of us who engage in Fulbright and those we interact with. And I consider myself to have been a Spanish student while I was in Chile. Yes, I had decent Spanish, but I improved, and that was a positive outcome of the experience.
Great. Drew, did you have any issues navigating life on a daily basis in Seoul? How did that work?
My life at the university was entirely in English and entirely the same as being anywhere else where English was the main language. When I left the university, like the minute you crossed the gate, life had to happen in Korean for the most part. In the last decade, I've kind of prided myself on being able to talk to taxi drivers in all East Asian countries, and I took a crash course in taxi Korean and dealt with that and just kind of basic things of navigating that. So like Jeff had said, was it challenging? Yes. Were there many faux pas made by me? Absolutely. Was everyone really understanding? I had great experiences with people in Korea. People liked to watch me struggle in Korean and then let me know that they spoke perfect English. So there were a lot of moments of humble pie, but again, it was a learning experience. I didn't set out to engage in a foreign country just to live my regular life. I wanted some kind of addition to it. And I feel like I got a great one to find out that there are all these things you can do that you're not even aware of, like when the time requires you to step up to it.
May I add something, Michelle? And that is,
this is your forum.
That is that my family accompanied me to Chile as well. And one of the attractions for me, maybe less so for my children, was that they would learn some Spanish. And we did put them in a Spanish-only local school, which I can still remember the first day of school when they were being taken in, and the looks on their face and the fear would probably, they'd probably have a different perspective than me, but by the end of their 5 months, the fact that they could communicate with their peers was one of the most amazing things that came out of the Fulbright process. My children's experience, culturally, with language and with other aspects of their, they're very challenging but rewarding experiences, something I'll always remember.
Yeah, and I studied in Greece, where I think if I'd been located in Athens or Thessaloniki, everybody would have spoken English. In Ioannina, that was actually not the case. A lot of people spoke English, and definitely for a lot of the work that I did, I was able to communicate with with other professors in English. But when I gave lectures, I often had translators for the students, which was a really interesting experience. I have not had translators. Trying to give a talk with a translator was interesting. But a lot of the people in this, I wasn't in a big, huge city. I was in Ioannina, which is, it's not an itty bitty town. It's a city, but it's much smaller and less international than Athens and Thessaloniki. So a lot of people did not speak English. And I remember I landed in Ioannina on a Sunday. And in Greece on Sundays, nothing happens. All the stores are closed, and people are just not really milling about. And I didn't know how to get to the place that I was renting. So here I landed, at new arrival at the airport, all excited with my kids in tow. And we wandered off, found our car, wandered into a town, and I found one young person wandering around. He took pity on me, but he couldn't explain the directions in English well enough. So he just jumped in the car with me and pointed left, pointed right until we ended up at the apartment we were renting. So I think, like Jeff and others were saying, people were so accommodating, so kind, and yeah, I mean, if that happened in the U.S., I'd probably be terrified, but somehow in Greece, it seemed really, really okay, really safe. And so communication was a challenge, but it was fun. And as some of the other folks have said, my kids did learn to speak some Greek. And I think that was a really fun experience for them. And, we still wish each other a Merry Christmas in Greek. So that's the one phrase that really stuck with us.
Great. All right. Stephen, anything to add, or can we move on?
No language issues where we were at all. So
great. All right. So we kind of touched a little bit on this, but I wanted to have you all weigh in about the host institution a little bit more, if that was something that you could expand on, or the particular award, and if you have any advice for our applicants. So that's one of the things that we get questions all the time. How can I make my application stronger? I applied last year, I wasn't selected, or I'm approaching this for the first time. What are some tips? So any of the points here on the slide, if you could kind of touch on that, because that's what the applicants really appreciate, is hearing from you about that.
I've gone last on the other, so I'll jump, because mine was experience was pretty direct, and I've kind of alluded to it. So like I said before, I had met a colleague elsewhere, and he and I sort of got together, and he basically recruited me to come to the Namibia University of Science and Technology. So that sort of led the selection of both the country and the institution. But as far as how the process went from there, obviously, certainly for people that are not going on an academic appointment, I don't necessarily know how those things would work and where you would look. But when it exists, if it's an organization that does have some interest and capacity to bring in international scholars, which is the case with the Namibian university that hosted me, they had a fantastic international office. So after the initial, niceties of, me being introduced by my colleague from a scholarly technical standpoint, things basically got turned over to their international office. And I mean, it was just like some magic happened in the background, and I was given visas and everything took place. So, I mean, I don't know that that's everyone's experience, but I think if it is available and if it is possible, allowing the host institution and them working with their institutions certainly certainly was the way that it worked on my end, because we did have some visa issues with my wife or whatever, and those challenges were summarily quashed by the international office at the university, and it was relatively hassle-free for us. So that's really the nut of that, is if you can rely on those local offices, those are the people that know who to call and what buttons to push.
I think one of the things that was really helpful to me when it came to my application was making a connection with the person who turned out to be my host. And like I said, I just found her name. I didn't know her ahead of time or anything. I just found her through the Fulbright website. But when I contacted her, she was really excited to Skype. And like I said, I felt like we got to know each other a little bit before I even left. And I think her support carried a lot of weight with my application. When we got to Greece, she didn't actually even live in Ioannina, so I was a little more on my own there, but she lived in Athens, but she traveled back and forth by plane. It's kind of far. But anyway, she was terrific, and she was a great support. And I think, I don't know exactly what happens behind the scenes in terms of applications, but I think that having her support was really important to me, being awarded the opportunity.
Yeah, I'll echo that sentiment. My host university was a University of Concepcion, but I don't think anything would have happened without a connection to an individual scientist at that university who was eager to have me come to Chile, and who worked with his department and university to basically push my application through their system. And so, yeah, I think that it is critical to have that contact, at least within my world of STEM, before a Fulbright application can be successfully reviewed. And I think, it benefited Jose quite a bit, because, he gets this free colleague coming down, working together on projects. We published some papers, and at the end of the day, you had to put up with me a little bit and host me, but it was fairly minimal amount of effort. And, I can say from the reverse perspective, I've not yet hosted a Fulbright scholar at Boise State University, but I would really like to do so. It was a sort of a win-win situation all around.
I'm happy to go last on this one, because I went through a process that I like to call the modified cold call. As I mentioned, I just asked Korean graduate students who are studying in the U.S. to introduce me to faculty from their bachelor's institutions. And I made contact with 3 institutions. One institution never emailed me back. The other 2 did, and sort of similar to what Kendall said, it led to a number of conversations talking about what their needs were, what my interests were, what my capabilities were, and how that might dovetail into their program, because I was looking to do some teaching along with the research. And there were back and forth calls, and some of them were at weird times of the day because Korea is 13 hours time difference in the summer. So sometimes it was 3 a.m, but we did our best to shine and let them know that I had a lot to offer, and work with them. But it was good to feel that I didn't have tons of academic contacts in Korea previously, but through channels that were some of my own sphere, I was able to make them. And this place that was literally across the world wound up feeling much closer to home, and we were able to kind of like delineate what would be useful in having a scholar for them. And I think, as Jeff mentioned, the notion that you get a free colleague is often a real draw for people to say, hey, this could be invigorating to all of our classrooms in a big way.
No, this is great. And I think it's nice to see the kind of range of experiences in garnering kind of host engagement, from Kendall, who did a cold call email with the contact listed in the award, to you, Drew, kind of doing a reverse approach with, meeting people that were from Korea and then channeling, using their contacts. This is great because we do get a lot of questions from applicants who say, well, I'd love to go on a Fulbright. I don't have many international collaborations, or I'd like to go to this particular country. I don't even know where to begin. So I want to let everyone know that a lot of the awards do have contacts at particular host institutions listed in the award, either an email or a phone number or both. And also if it's, depending on if it's a country that has a Fulbright commission there, the commission contact will be there. Oftentimes the U.S. Embassy contact will be there if the program is administered by the U.S. Embassy. So there's lots of different contacts in addition to my team having their contact information. So we are happy to facilitate those connections. Cold calling is something that is absolutely okay. A lot of people say, can I just contact them? And that's absolutely fine. I always say shop around, write to multiple people, gauge interest, and whoever bites. Just like Drew, he wrote to 3 and 2 of them replied. That's great. And I think in a lot of countries, don't be afraid to send more than one email, because sometimes, it takes a little more persistence. So yeah, a lot of great advice there. The last slide that I wanted to go to was if you could talk about go a little more in depth maybe about the interactions you had with students and faculty, and perhaps how the U.S. Embassy or the Commission engaged with you. Was there an orientation that you went to? Were there talks that you gave? A little bit more about that.
I can start again. I think we're kind of in that routine now. I actually really enjoyed the interactions with the U.S. Embassy. So the U.S. Embassy is located in Athens in Greece, and I was in Ioannina, which, like I said, is a airplane flight away. So I started my trip, though I flew into Athens and attended an orientation, and it was great to meet all the other Fulbrighters. I think I was the only scholar that year in Greece, so the other folks were students who were there to teach English. But it was really neat because they were traveling all around Greece, and they all wanted to, and so pretty much all of them came and stayed with us at one point in Ioannina, because it's a little bit far flung and they needed it was nice to have a home base. So it was fun to meet the other Fulbrighters, and we had a number of events at the U.S. Embassy that were actually really helpful. We had, they gave a number of talks that we participated in. And since I was really interested in the effects of the economic and political situation in Greece and how those, were impacting youth development, getting a better handle on exactly what was going on was super helpful to me. I was there in the fall of 2016. So they had a big voting party where everybody came together to vote. We could, for what was going on at home. And so we were voting for, U.S. President. And actually Barack Obama was there while in Athens at the embassy while I was there, and I couldn't get back to see him. I was so bummed. But I think the rest of the Fulbrighters did go. And that was pretty exciting. American presidents don't always visit Greece, but like I said, there was the Brexit talks underway and this political crisis, the refugee crisis. So it was pretty exciting that he was there, and it was neat to at least be included. We were offered tickets. And like I said, I just couldn't get away. I had research meetings set up and things like that I just couldn't reschedule. But I thought that was really neat, and I enjoyed the events at the embassy, and I enjoyed the talks, and learned a lot about the Greek situation, politically, economically, historically, culturally, all of that from these talks at the embassy.
I guess I'll go next. We're in that pattern, as we mentioned. So yeah, I was doing teaching and research, and I think it was really the most beneficial thing for me because the groups of students I was teaching, while some were undergrads, many were grads, and doctoral students, which kind of put us all in a similar age category. Korea has culturally and structurally a lot of power differentials, and you generally only assimilate or interact with people who are like within a decade of your age. So luckily, because of my age, I was able to kind of interact with people and begin to quickly use their networks and their understandings of things to feed my own research and feed my own just kind of understanding of how to function and what to do in the country. I never got to go to the U.S. Embassy. Korea does have a commission, the Korean American Educational or Exchange Commission, excuse me. And we did a number of lecture nights with them. Thursday nights were lecture nights. So Korea has a large number of ETA students, English teaching students. So they would all come together for a lecture, and often we would head out afterwards for continued discussion about what we were doing, about what their experience was. So it was really amazing to engage with that and even offer a lecture on the work I was doing in the country and get to know people that way. Seoul is a 24/7 city, so at any time of the day you can kind of cook something up, and it's interesting to be able to learn how to engage that quickly.
You want to go, Jeff, or you want me to jump in? Or I don't know if Jeff is frozen. So anyway, I'll jump in. I mean, I can't fully explain the benefits of the research. I mean, like I said, I'm still working with them. I'm advising some students down there. I still have this ongoing photo there, the mobility access in African cities. That's the Volvo program. So I'm still actively engaged in research there. I actually was just recently contacted by a consortium of European universities because they're putting together, going after some EU funding on road safety, and they wanted to tap into Namibia. It's not a big country. Not a lot of people have a footprint there. So I, friend of a friend of a friend, I was contacted through the Irish team. And so, I mean, it's actually, I mean, I'll just be honest. I mean, it's kind of helped, with my brand working on, the African road safety endeavor. So that's been pretty fantastic. Really, really great support from the embassy and folks. I mean, anything that we ever needed, we engaged I went to things there at the post. They would have social engagements, lectures and things. Some of those were particularly good and relevant for my wife. The person, the State Department person who ran the post switched over. The first guy was great, had a young family, very businesslike, did his other thing. The next guy came in, and I mean, he was hilarious. And I'll just say we had some epic dinner parties at that guy's house, and it was a great thing, right? Because as we were getting ready to leave, things were changing. The economy was slowing a bit, and I was having a really hard time selling my Land Rover, which served me well in Namibia. So the guy that, who ran the post there was like, hey man, just leave it with me. I'll take care of it. And I got on a plane and left, and they sold it, actually sold it to another Fulbrighter coming in, but they, held it and did all the transactions and everything. So just super, super supportive. I mean, and the thing I'll say about the students and that sort of thing, that really kind of goes back to my wife. My wife, although not officially on a Fulbright, she got a post. She's a social worker, and she got a post in the college, in the counseling office. So she actually engaged on a much more in-depth and day-to-day level with the students. And I mean, and they were just some of the most lovely and interestingly progressively minded, dynamic young people. I mean, I don't mean to sound, trite or dramatic or anything, but it was inspiring. It was really, really, really sort of magic to get in and see what these kids were getting in and pushing, really advocating LGBTQ issues and things that you wouldn't necessarily be happening there. And it was really amazing to be a part of that. And I owe that to my wife. So.
I'm back. My connection timed out for a second, but now I'm here again. So I did not have a whole lot of contact with the U.S. Embassy, but I did have one interesting anecdote that I'd like to share, and that is I was working in Chile studying volcanoes when the volcano I happened to be studying erupted, and my family and I were based near to this volcano, about 10 miles from the actual summit. So it was an interesting evening when this volcano, for the first time in 30 years, decided to erupt explosively. And one of my most poignant memories of being in Chile is waking up my children, grabbing our passports and putting on our jeans, and then walking out to the patio to look up at the volcano and think about what might come next. And we did not evacuate. There was no need to evacuate. There was no imminent danger, but it's something you think about when you see a column of lava, not too far away from where you're residing. So that was an interesting evening. And the next day, I remember getting an email from the embassy saying, "Did you know that there was a volcano in southern Chile that erupted?" And I didn't quite maybe tell them exactly how close the volcano was to where we were situated. I didn't want to cause them undue concern. But they kept tabs on me, and they were interested in making sure that me and my family stayed safe, and had that contact, that sort of foundation within the country. I appreciated that, even though I didn't use them very often.
Yeah, well, that is good to know. I mean, you got to see it really firsthand. I think you said you woke the kids up in the 3 a.m. or something like that. They kind of, in a way, it's witnessing history of it if it hasn't erupted, in so many decades. So.
Yeah, and my colleague was the colleague that I've been speaking about throughout this talk in Concepcion was so. He was happy for me because this was an event of a lifetime, but he says, "I've been studying this volcano for decades, and you come down for 6 months and it performs for you." So that was a little bit of jealousy there, good-natured jealousy.
Brought some Fulbright luck. Well, thank you so much. We have reached time. I want to share the last slide that has my contact information. And all of the ambassadors on the call today have their emails shared on their slides. You can do a simple search online and find them if you'd like to be in touch. They're also showcased on our website, cis.org, so you can go there and learn more. Again, thank you for joining us. This presentation has been recorded. We will archive it on our site, and we look forward to assisting you with your applications. And again, keep in mind that the deadline for the 2022 and 2023 academic year is September 15 this year. So on behalf of Fulbright, on behalf of the Alumni Ambassadors, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing your applications in the fall. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.